Hi, it's summer and the bird breeding season is really well progressed. There might be a few species that are sort of early in their season, but for many others, they'll be right in the middle, or indeed they'll already have fledged young and perhaps be working on a second brood. Now is a great time to get out trying to confirm breeding attempts in rare breeding birds. In RBBP terms, as with bird atlases, a confirmed breeding attempt is any pair of birds laying eggs. It doesn't require that breeding attempt for being successful to fledge young to be regarded as confirmed breeding. So it's a great time to look out for the behaviours indicative of confirmed breeding. Maybe returning to sites where you've had possible or probable breeding birds of a rare breeding bird panel species earlier in the spring to sort of upgrade that record. So in this video I thought I'd talk about some of the evidence of confirmed breeding, what to look for and how that might vary between species. As always, please remember to put the welfare of breeding birds first. Avoid unnecessary disturbance and remember the law and the fact it's illegal to disturb bird species listed on Schedule 1 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act at or near the nest without a licence to do so. And of course, I'm telling you this because I want you to submit records with that breeding evidence. So remember to do so. Submit records with breeding evidence, numbers, precise location, all the sorts of details we want. And of course, if you know there are eggs or you see young, you have an idea of productivity, please include that information as well. How many fledged young did you see, for example, to make that record more valuable to us? So obviously a nest with eggs in, that's confirmed breeding. Evidence code NE. But there aren't that many species for which that's easy to see. Often seeing an occupied nest with a sitting bird is easy. You might not see the eggs themselves, but a little ringed plover sitting on an expanse of shingle, a peregrine on a cliff ledge, seabirds such as Mediterranean gulls in a colony, you can see them occupying the nest, ON. This can also be used for birds entering nest holes or high nests that you can't see into, if that's indicative that they're incubating or feeding young there. But for many species, nests are hidden away, and the best chance of finding evidence of confirmed breeding comes later, after eggs have hatched. For some species, this could be a lot later, actually finding the old nests, as long as they're nests from the season that's just finished. So for the likes of red-throated diver, you might find an abandoned nest scrape and eggshells. So UN's the code for that, finding nests at the end of the season. Another way of proving breeding is looking for adult birds carrying food. That's code FF. Most birds don't carry food around unless they're taking it to their young. Even birds of prey will only carry prey items a short distance if they're planning to eat them themselves. So if you see a goshawk flying over in a straight line, heading a long distance with a prey item, that's very, very likely heading back to the nest. So that's FF. Likewise, a warbler carrying a mouthful of food. Occasionally, you might also prove breeding by seeing a bird coming the other way. A passerine carrying a bright white parcel in its bill is removing a fecal sac from the nest, and that's also code FF. I've just seen a reed bunting do that. Actually, it's not a rare breeder, but interesting to see nonetheless. Same as you might encounter birds incubating on nests, you might later see young in nests. For example, species like seabirds, egrets, raptors, some of which have got highly visible nests. Or you might just hear young birds in the nest, and this still counts. This is NY, nest with young, evidence code. Of course, there are many species, nidifuga species, in which the downy young leave the nest immediately after hatching, forage for themselves or maybe with some help from parents. For many species of waders and ducks, this is the best way to prove breeding. In fact, for many secretive species, it's really the only chance you've got. And then, of course, there's the ridiculous species, those that raise their young in the nest. Finding recently fledged young is also often the easiest way to confirm breeding. Now, there's a slight complication here. With young before fledging, you can be certain that they've bred at the site where you see them or near enough. But after fledging, you need to be confident that the birds you're seeing, the young birds, have been raised on that site. So you have to ask questions about, well, have I seen the species, the adults at the site earlier in the season? How old are these birds? Could they have flown in from elsewhere? Are they still in the family party? These sort of indications of whether they're likely to have been bred at the site where you're seeing them. So both fledged young and downy young of Nidifusia species which haven't yet fledged are recorded under breeding evidence code FL. Okay? And then there's one last code to mention, worth mentioning, that's DD. That's adult birds giving distraction displays or showing high levels of alarm indicating there must be a nest or young nearby. Be careful when it comes to alarming birds, be careful only to use this where birds are really very agitated. Many species will alarm call even before they have young or a nest with eggs, so be sure to rule that out. High levels of agitation, code DD. So there you are, there's a challenge for the next month or so. How many of your records can you upgrade from possible or probable, from singing birds or pairs earlier in the season to confirmed? It might take some perseverance, it might take some skill. And of course, it's really dependent on the birds. In some cases, birds will not have laid eggs, so you can't confirm breeding because they haven't. Or they might fail to fledge young, which is where you need to prove breeding by finding those fledged young. But it's been really satisfying if you can do this. And it is the mark of a top rare breeding bird field worker. So give it a try and good luck.